What's up, you guys, and welcome back to It's OMGiGi. I'm so excited. So excited. Number one, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I am so excited because this channel is a review channel. I like to give you recap reviews, whatevers, and I haven't been giving them to you. And to be honest, I lose interest in shows very quickly. It is very rare that I can watch a show that piques my interest. And I think it's safe to say I found a show that piques my interest, because if you haven't been able to tell from the title, we are going to do a recap review, whatever, plus theories, observations of WandaVision. So if you are not familiar with Marvel, Marvel is amazeballs. It is a superhero brand. You might know the Avengers. That's Marvel. Iron Man, Marvel. Captain America, Marvel. Spider-Man, Marvel. And what they did was they gave, and just for anybody else who's fans of other Marvel superheroes I did not name, don't come for me. I'm not trying to sit here and list all of them. That's going to make this intro extremely long. Hello, we don't want that. So what Marvel did was, on Disney Plus, they created WandaVision. And WandaVision is a series that stars the Scarlet Witch, Wanda, with her Russian last name that I cannot pronounce. We won't even try. And Vision. So Vision is actually the human form of, well, the bicentennial man human form of Jarvis, which is, or was, Iron Man's computer. And fun fact, he is actually an Infinity Stone. He has the Infinity Stone right here in the middle of his head, almost like a bindi, and it powers his life, which if you've seen Infinity Wars, we know it powers his life. And so they are a couple. And they bonded during one of the Avengers movies about being different. They are both very different. Wanda was lost for a lot of different reasons and felt like an outcast, and Vision could empathize with that. And that's kind of what sparked their relationship. If you want to know more about Wanda and Vision's story, I highly suggest that you watch the Avengers movies and get to see how all of that came to fruition, more or less. So WandaVision is their story. Now, here's the thing. It is unknown to me if this is supposed to be a prequel, right? Because, okay, I'm going to have to give you some spoilers. If you did not see Infinity Wars, then you would not know this. But Vision actually died in Infinity Wars. I know. I was upset. Not as upset as I was when they killed Gamora or Iron Man or Natasha. But I was still upset that Vision got killed because Vision's a great character. So, because Vision was dead, I wasn't sure what was happening. I'm not really sure where the story came to fruition. But as we get further into this recap review, whatever, you're gonna see where I'm going with this. So it premieres on Disney Plus today, January 15th. And when I went to go watch it, I noticed there was only 2 episodes. So what they're doing is that they're releasing a new episode every Friday. There's supposed to be 9 episodes, I believe, in total. Or maybe it was 9 episodes. Yeah, I think it was 9 episodes in total. Because what they said was, and this was just from like a source that I Googled, apparently they're supposed to be releasing a new episode every Friday, which means we got recap reviews, whatever, back at least until the series ends, because I'm definitely following it through. And they only premiered the first 2 episodes today, which made me sad because after watching the first 2 episodes, I wanted more. Like, I don't want to wait until next week. I want more, but that's okay. So let's start with the very first episode. Now, it's themed. It's this 1950s TV show theme, and the theme remains the same within the first episode and the second episode. If you've seen the trailer, then you see that Vision and Wanda kind of go through different decades, and the decades that they're starting off with is the 50s. Now, I grew up watching TV Land. I'm a huge fan. So when I first watched it, my very first vibe that I got was Bewitched. The transition music was very similar to Bewitched. This is Bewitched right here, in case you are not familiar. But the transition was very similar to Bewitched. And it just gave me Bewitched vibes. And then in the intro, it also gave me Dick Van Dyke. Dick Van Dyke? Oh, words. They're hard tonight. The Dick Van Dyke Show. It gave me some vibes of that. It also gave me some Jetsons vibes. And of course, throwing in Marvel. Now, when you first watch the show, it just kind of starts like any typical 1950s show. Honestly, the very first episode was very reminiscent of the very first episode of Bewitched, which makes sense. Bewitched is about Sam, the witch, who marries Darren, the mortal, and them living a life with her being a witch and trying to hide it from their mortal neighbors, right? But the only difference between Bewitched and WandaVision is that Wanda is a witch just like Sam, and instead of Vision being mortal, he is a robot. Kind of like Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams and the lady who played Miss Honey in Matilda. Yep. So in the first episode, it just starts like that. They're this newly married couple, and they move into this town, which was very reminiscent of Morning Glory Circle, which again, Bewitched reference. And she's doing magic and all these things, and he looks like Vision. Now, something very important to note is that he looks completely like Vision, including the Infinity Stone. Very important to note that, okay? And they're in black and white. They have a neighbor named Agnes, and in Bewitched, their neighbor was Gladys. Now, Gladys Kravitz in Bewitched was very nosy. Agnes doesn't seem super nosy. She just seems like someone that really truly wants to be friends with Wanda. And throughout these 2 episodes, we don't see her really questioning Wanda or anything like that. So it's almost confusing because there's no pilot. Like in the pilot of every show, you always get introduced to the characters, to what the show is going to be about, what the audience can expect. You get that in a pilot. Whether you really realize it or not, you familiarize yourself with the concept of the show, the characters, and all the basics that you need to know to see if you want to watch the second episode. With WandaVision, you don't really get that. It just kind of, the reason why you don't get it is because you already know the background of the characters. So when you already know the background of the characters, it just seems like they jumped into it, and it's perplexing. So they just jump right into it. They're 1950s out. Wanda's using witchcraft just like Samantha to do household chores. Vision looks like himself, and he has a basic 9-to-5 office job. And he does something where he's able to make himself look human and not look like Vision. And before he leaves for work, they notice that there's a heart on the calendar, but they can't figure out why. So they both think that it's an important date that they both should know, and they're not sure about it. So Vision goes to work, and Wanda meets Agnes, their neighbor. And Agnes just welcomes herself in, and they start to talk about it. So Agnes begins to ask questions, like women do, to try and deduce what this heart date could be, right? So Wanda and Agnes have come to terms that it must be something romantic, like a special, like an anniversary of some sort between Wanda and Vision. But this is perplexing to both Wanda, Vision, and the audience, because we don't know what is going on. Because the last time we saw these characters, one was dead and the other one came back to help in Whack Endgame. So as the audience, we're kind of confused, but then Wanda and Vision are also confused. So as an audience member, especially someone who has watched the Marvel series, I'm starting to wonder, are they being trapped? Like, are they being held against their will? So that was the first red flag that went off in my head. So as the episode progresses, it progresses like a typical 1950s show. He goes to work, he does all of his job, but because he's robotic, he does it much quicker, and he quickly realizes that his boss's last name is Hart, and he's supposed to be having dinner with his boss and his wife at his house. And he calls Wanda, and of course, like any good 1950s wholesome show, they talk about it, but they're talking about 2 different things that just happen to mirror each other. So when they have this conversation, they end the conversation thinking that they're on the same page, and they're not. Wanda thinks it's romantic. He knows that it's business, and he's really worried that, it's not gonna go off like he needs it to, because it is reliant on him getting a promotion. So he comes home with the boss, and Wanda has everything all set up and glamorous for like a romantic evening. And it's his boss and his wife. Now, something else to note, it's nothing really a theory or anything, but the wife of the boss is actually Kitty from That 70s Show. And she mirrors her character, Kitty, on That 70s Show. I don't know the actress's name. You can leave it down below if you know. Whatever. So they have this whole entire thing, and the first time they have a dinner which just goes comedically awry, and finally they're able to sit down and eat. Now this is where we get some more information or character development. They sit down for dinner, and number one, the boss is a jerk. He's an absolute jerkwad. We don't stand, we don't like him. So they sit down for dinner, and Kitty asks, or Mrs. Hart, because that's their names, Mr. and Mrs. Hart. She says, "How did you two kids meet?" I can't do Kitty's voice. But she was asking, "Where'd you come from?" She literally was like, "Where'd you come from? When'd you get married? Why don't you have kids?" And what I really enjoyed also is that they poke a lot of fun about the stereotypes and sexism from the 50s. They really poke fun at that. So when she asks those questions, Wanda and Vision both get stuck because they don't have an answer. Now, as a viewer, again, knowing their backstory and Marvel, or knowing from what we've seen from Avengers and stuff, you're thinking they must be held captive, and that's why they don't know their past, because they should be able to easily answer those questions. And the boss says the same exact thing. So they're trying to come up with it. Wanda looks completely saddened and perplexed, and the boss is just yelling at them like, "Answer the question, you should know." Kitty's like, "It's not that big of a deal, leave them alone." And he's like, "No, you need to answer the question." And he bangs on the table, which made me upset, because this is not your house, sir. Don't be banging on tables, sir. You don't pay no bills, sir. And he's fussing, and he starts to choke on a piece of sausage, which reminded me of young Sheldon, but that's different. And he starts choking, and Kitty goes, "Stop it, stop it." And she progressively panics and laughs and says, "Ha ha ha, stop it," as her husband, Mr. Hart, is choking. Wanda and Vision looked panicked, and they looked panicked because they both know this man is going to die, but they also have this look like they know if we save them, then everyone's going to know that we have powers. So he chokes, and he falls on the floor, choking, trying to gasp for air, and Wanda just looks at him and says, "Vision, help him." Vision says, "All right." He gets up, he takes his hand, and he sticks it through his body, because Vision is a robot that can walk through walls. He sticks his hand through his throat and pulls the sausage out. The guy gets up. He's a little disheveled, but then he snaps back into it, and it's back into a regular 1950s sitcom, and everything seems all right. And they move along. So Wanda and Vision, after they leave, sit down, and they're like, "We really don't have a story. We don't have an anniversary or even wedding rings." So they come up with all those things, and Wanda whips up a wedding ring. Their anniversary is this day, and their song is Yakety Yak. You have to watch the episode to get it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you every little detail. And then Wanda whips up their wedding rings, and that's the end of the first episode. Then you go into this second episode, and the second episode, then it ends, but it zooms out almost like as if you are in the producer director area of the film, like of where it's being shot, because as it zooms out from the screen, you see the TV, and you see the producer setup, you see all the monitors and different things like that. Now this is where we get our first solidified hint. It's this: there is somebody writing notes in a journal. He closes it, and I noticed this logo. Now, I watched this twice. I watched it by myself the first time, and then Kyrie wanted to watch it together because you can do group watch on Disney. So I watched it with her again. And this time I took screenshots of the things that I noticed, because at this point I really started to watch it the second time looking for more clues. And looking for more clues was like, no, I need to do a recap, review, whatever for this. So that's the very first clue that we get right here. And I'm looking at this logo and I'm like, what is this logo? Initially, my first thought, Hail Hydra. That was my first thought. My first thought right off the bat. But that's not the Hail Hydra logo. I don't recognize this logo. If you guys do, let me know in the comments down below, because I didn't recognize it. So we move on to episode 2. And episode 2 really dives into community and trying to make Wanda and Vision fit in. So in the beginning, they're in 2 separate beds, just like in I Love Lucy, and they hear this thud sound, really loud crashing thud sound. Now initially I thought it was thunder, but Wanda does her little magic and they see that it's a tree hitting the house. But something just seemed really off about that. But we're not going to talk about that. Not today. So as the episode goes on, that whole thud and just not feeling safe in that moment sparked Vision to want to be part of the watch community. What do you call it? Neighborhood watch team. And Wanda had to go off with Agnes to meet a bunch of other Stepford wives, because they are going to be doing a community fundraiser talent show for the local elementary school. And this is where we see our first not so nice character. I don't know if I want to call her a villain just yet, but definitely not so nice character. She's very mean, and while she's telling the group of women what they need to do, we are introduced to the character of Geraldine. And Geraldine, if you can't tell by her name, is a Black woman. And her and Wanda meet. And her and Wanda click. Like, there's just this unspoken, I get it kind of a thing, right? And I must say, Vision and Wanda's act for the talent show, which we find out in the beginning of the episode, is they are going to do magic. They're going to be a magician act, which there's the comedy in that right off the bat. So when Agnes picks up, back up a little bit. When Agnes picks up Wanda to go to this meeting to meet Dottie, who is the character who is mean and an undecided villain character just yet, Wanda hears this sound and she comes out the house. And mind you, this is all in black and white. And this is the very first time we see color. And it reminded me of the movie Pleasantville with Reese Witherspoon and Tobey Maguire, because there is this toy helicopter and it's in color. And we see the logo again. So it's the second time we're seeing the logo. The first time we saw it at the very end of Wanda and Vision, episode 1. Then we see it again in the beginning, the same exact notebook logo, only because they do a recap review, whatever. And then we see it again right here on this helicopter. So it's the first time she sees color. Agnes pops up, she throws it because she got nervous. Agnes gives her Senor Scritchy, her bunny for the talent show. So she takes the bunny in the house, they go off. Agnes tells Wanda that it's really important that she makes friends with Dottie. Dottie is, again, our character that we are undetermined if she's actually a villain, but we know she is the Regina George of the Stepford Wives, okay? So she tells her, if you get in good with her, then you're going to be good. And she makes a comment kind of about the way she chooses to dress, because, in the 50s, we always see them in these really cute dresses and poodle skirts, but Wanda's in pants. Homie is in slacks, which women in the 50s did do. But they were considered, I think you called them teddy girls. I think that's the proper terminology. Anyway, so they go to this meeting and Dottie, our Regina George, is talking. And then we're introduced to Geraldine, the Black female character. And like I said, they hit it off and there's just that click. Like, how when you think about the first time you met your best friend. What was that like? Y'all met and there was just that unspoken, we're best friends. Like, you didn't have to work at it. You didn't have to ask 1,000,001 questions to get to know the person. There was just something that clicked that made sense for y'all to be friends. Or even in a relationship, sometimes it can happen like that too. So that's what happened between Geraldine and Wanda. Then Wanda asks Geraldine her name. And this is the next clue that I am given. Geraldine stutters and looks perplexed by the question, the same way Wanda and Vision were perplexed when they were asked by Mrs. Hart in episode 1 what their background story was. She looks perplexed and she says very slowly and almost like a question mark for someone to validate her answer, Geraldine. So we know something's up with Geraldine. Now, is Geraldine a villain or is Geraldine in this same entanglement? Joke of 2020. Anyway, is she in the same entrapment as Wanda and Vision? The world may never know. But that is what we see, right? So now we move on and we get cut to Vision with the neighborhood watch committee, and he's talking to them. They think that he's a stiff, but then he makes a serious comment by accusing one of his coworkers of being a communist, and everyone freezes, looks mortified. And in my mind, I thought of Clue because it's the 50s and communism. And then they all laugh and said he's joking. Now, Herman, whatever his name is, Herb, the black man, he offers him, Vision, being him, a stick of big red gum. And Vision, not really knowing what it is, he doesn't eat or drink. We know this. He addresses not eating in the episode around them when they ask him if he wants a Danish. And then in the intro for episode 2, we see him being given a drink of water, and he throws it at his boss. He throws it behind him and it hits his boss in the cartoon intro. So he offers him a stick of gum. And I'm not sure if Vision knew what gum was or not. And it was Big Red, my personal favorite. But Vision takes the gum and he's chewing on it, kind of perplexed. And they make a joke. And Herbert says, "This guy is funny," and hits him on the back. And he ingests the gum. Now, remember, Vision is a robot. So he doesn't have stomach acid. He doesn't have a digestive tract. It got into his gears and it made him act drunk. So while all that is going on, we flash back to Wanda with Dottie, aka Regina George, and they're talking, and Dottie makes it very clear that she doesn't like her. She says she's heard a lot of things about Vision and Wanda, and Wanda is just kind of like, "I assure you, whatever you heard, she was like, "I don't know what you heard, but I assure you we don't mean any harm." And Dottie, it gets very weird. It goes from being this 50s funny classic to being very, very Marvel serious. And Dottie's like, "But see, I don't believe you." And the radio starts bugging out, right? So the radio starts bugging out, and you hear the radio kind of like breaking up, and then you hear somebody over the intercom say, "Wanda, who's doing this to you? Wanda." And initially it sounded like Captain America to me. I done watched the episode twice, and both times I heard Captain America, but it could just be me. Now, it's very important to note that in the very first episode, there's a commercial, like a commercial for the audience that's within the show. And that commercial was for Stark's toaster. And at first I thought it was just poking fun of, again, that 1950s sexism that they had. Because for the toaster, the guy literally says, "Is your husband tired of you burning his toast? Try Stark's new toaster." But then we see, again, this commercial with the same guy, and he's talking about fashion, and then the product that he's trying to sell the audience is a watch, and they zoom in on the watch, and that is where you see the one and only time thus far I've noticed you see the Hail Hydra logo. Well, it's just the Hydra logo, and it says Hydra in the watch. Hello, right here. So I'm like, Dottie hears this man asking Wanda who's doing this to you. So she looks at Wanda and says, who are you? What are you? Where are you from? And then she's holding a glass and she breaks it and she starts to bleed. And this is the second time we see color in this episode because the blood has color. Wanda gets freaked out because she sees that the blood is colored, but it would appear that Dottie, aka Regina George, doesn't notice this. So Wanda gives her a cloth. Dottie like comes back to life, kind of like Mr. Hart when he was choking. It was like he was out of character for a moment, but then got back to it. Dottie gets back to it, and Dottie makes a snarky comment about Wanda giving her a white linen cloth to help her with her cut hand. So from there, we go to the talent show, and Geraldine she's kind of like directing it, making sure people go to where they need to go, and la 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 la. And Wanda's pacing back and forth because she's waiting for Vision, because Vision is not at this talent show yet. Vision shows up drunk. He doesn't show up drunk, but he seems drunk, right? And so they do the talent show, and it ends up being like this big comical mess because he starts using his real powers, not the fake magic that they had practiced, but his actual powers. And Wanda had to use her powers to make it seem like he was just doing fake things, right? So it's actually really funny. So everything is done. The very last thing that they had to do, that they had to pull off, was the invisible chamber, where somebody goes into a wardrobe, disappears, abracadabra, they reappear. So he was supposed to put Wanda in there, and Wanda was supposed to disappear. But he forgot to put Wanda in there because he's drunk off of the gum that is slowing down his gears in his processing system. So Wanda has to do her little... So in Bewitched, she did this... I can't do it. But in Bewitched, she would twinkle her nose. Wanda does something like this. And so Wanda has to do this, and they don't know what's in the box. So Herb is like,
what's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box?
And so everybody starts chanting, what's in the box? So they open the box, and it's Geraldine. And Geraldine is just kind of like, bruh. Now I know for a fact there's something special about Geraldine, because of all things that Wanda could have conjured to be in that box. One, how did she not know what she conjured to be in the box? And number two, why would it just magically be Geraldine? We got questions. We got comments. We got concerns. So they run off stage really quickly, and Wanda's like, bro, what's going on with you? And he's like, I don't know, I feel really, really weird. So she does a little loop, and she finds the gum. She does her magic. The gum comes back up, and don't worry, that scene won't cause any regurgitation reaction to anyone. But then everything is fine, and before she was trying to tell him something weird is going on, but she didn't get the chance. So after she gets the gum out, she's like, let's just go before Dottie yells at us for ruining her show. Let's just go. So they call themselves sneaking off. They weren't sneaking off. They literally walked right past everybody. And Dottie called them, and Dottie ended up praising them for such a hilarious presentation or skit. And it really was pretty funny. So we see that, and then they end up back at home. Now, mind you, they're still in black and white because it's still the 50s. So they sit down on the couch, and in that episode, they're very Stepford wives, right? So there's one line that Dottie says that everyone says about 3 different times. And the line is, for the children. So she says about the talent show, and she's talking to the women, that we're doing this for the children. And they all say in unison, for the children. Again, it reminded me of Hail Hydra, the way that it was so creepy and uniformed. So when they get home, Wanda goes, I think the children need some popcorn. And she gets up, and she's magically 6 months pregnant. Huh? So she's like, is this really happening? And Vision was like, it is, but then they hear that thud again. So Vision's like, I swear I'm going to pull the root off of that flippin' tree. And they go outside, and the tree isn't banging on the house. But instead, where the little, oh my gosh, the street sewer lid thing is, it comes up, and this beekeeper comes out. Like a man dressed in a beekeeper comes out. And we see that logo again that we saw from the end of the first episode right here. So this is the third time we've seen this logo, and one time we've seen the Hydra logo. And he turns and looks at them, but he has a mask, like he has that bee catcher's mask on, and Wanda says, no. All of a sudden, it rewinds, and they replay it where we see her pregnant again, and she says to Vision again, is this really happening? And he says, yes. He kisses her, and when he kisses her, his face is in color. And then all of a sudden, everything around them is in color. So now, this leads me to a theory, right? We know that Wanda has the ability to mess with people's minds, right? We know this. This is when we get into the theory part, guys. We know Wanda can mess with people's minds. And the fact that Wanda said no when she saw this dude, right? And on the back, remember the back of his shirt had that same logo. She sees him and she says no. Vision looks very confused, but Wanda doesn't. Wanda looks like she knows this dude. She says no, and all of a sudden the scene rewinds and plays out the way that she wants it to. So now it leads me to believe this, and this is how we circle all the way back around to Infinity Wars. In Infinity Wars, Vision dies. Thanos pulls the stone right out of his head. Thanos' hand is the size of the world, and he pulls it out of Thanos. He pulls it out of Vision's itty bitty head, and he kills Vision. And Wanda is just stuck with so much grief, right? So we know Vision's dead. He's dead. He doesn't come back in Endgame. He didn't disappear like everybody else. He's dead because he was the Infinity Stone, and the Infinity Stone was needed to wipe out half of the whole entire planet's population. So we know that he's dead. So when Wanda looks at this guy and says no, and it rewinds, and it plays out the way she wants it to, it makes me believe that they're trapped in something, but Wanda knows what they're trapped in. But she's putting on a front like she doesn't know. Or this is all an illusion of her mind. Because at first I thought it was Hydra doing something to them. But they weren't together long enough for all of this to happen between Avengers movies. Were they? Guys, so much. So much. So that's WandaVision. Yay! That is WandaVision. That's our recap review, whatever, for WandaVision, with a little bit of theories, a little bit of observations. Yeah. So have you guys watched WandaVision? Do you plan on watching it? What are your theories? What are your questions, comments, concerns? I want to know. Leave them in the comments down below, or feel free to follow me on any of my social medias at It's OMGiGi on all my social media platforms. And if you didn't know, I have a podcast, OMGiGi. Anywhere you listen to your podcasts, I'm everywhere. So be sure to listen to my podcast, and I cannot wait to communicate with you guys and to get back into these weekly reviews, because I've missed YouTube and I've missed doing these recaps for you. So my senses are titillated. All right, you guys, I will see you guys later. Loves and likes ya. Bye.